In the congregation that remember a comedian by the name of Flip Wilson? Yeah, I loved Flip Wilson. Flip Wilson used to do this routine called the Rev. Anybody remember his routine called the Rev? And he always had a pulpit in front of him, and he was always walking around the pulpit like this the whole time he was talking, and he had four guys behind him that were always giving kind of like what is the call and response format. He would say something and they would say it back to him, right? So he did this one skit this one time as the Rev, and he was talking to the church about how the church needed to learn to grow, it needed to be bigger, it needed to get out there in the world. And he said, but before we can do any of that, we've got to learn to crawl. We've got to learn to crawl as a congregation together. And so the gallery behind him says, let it crawl, Lev, let it crawl, right? So then he gets really wound up. And he's like, and after we learn how to crawl, we're going to learn how to walk. And so they're all like, let it walk, Rev, let it walk. And he says, and then after we learn to walk, we're all going to learn to run together. And let it run, Rev, let it run. And he said, and to do that, brothers and sisters, we need to finance our ministries. We're going to need some money. And somebody goes, let it crawl, Rev, let it crawl. Do you remember that one? That's sometimes what the church feels like. I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes the church feels like we got lots of big ideas to run, but when it comes time to make that happen, it's let it crawl. It's let it crawl. Now I have to tell you, I am not a numbers person. I am absolutely not a numbers person. I don't like numbers. I don't like to have to deal with numbers. I will, and I can do it very well when I set my mind to it, but I would rather be doing other things like reading books and making pottery and all that kind of stuff. Why would I want to worry myself about numbers? But I'm going to also be very honest with you and tell you that there is a part of stewardship that always has to talk about the numbers. But this is what I want to relieve you of the burden about. The number side of stewardship is easy. That's the easy part of stewardship. Because we know numbers, we know mathematics are a finite science. They tell the truth every time you use them. 2 plus 2 is always going to equal 4, right? Unless you got some other kind of education that I didn't get. 2 plus 2 is always going to equal 4. When you have 10, or need 10, and you have 6, you're going to need 4 to get to 10, right? Doesn't matter how you come up with that 4, but 6 plus 4 is always going to equal 10. Same thing happened in stewardship, right? This is what the church needs to do ministry. This is what the church got. And we call the gap between the two of them the deficit, right? We call that the deficit. So there's always, I've never ever been, I'm going to tell you honestly, I have never ever been in the church where there was a stewardship campaign where what the church needed, the church got. There was always running from behind, always trying to catch up, always trying to make up the difference. So I thought, I'm going to look at the numbers. I'm going to look at the numbers. What if, you see, in that vision that we were talking about last week, about being the thankful one who turned back to Jesus and said thank you, what if we looked at just the simplicity of the numbers to see where it was we needed to learn something? So, Steve, would you put that slide up for me? So, this is what it was. We had 61 pledges last year, 61 pledges. Do you know that if each pledging unit had given only $5 more per week, only $5 per week, times 52, that equals $260. $260 times 61 pledges would have resulted in $15,860. Simple math. Simple math. $5 per pledging unit was all that it would have taken. Now, of course we know that some of us can't afford to give a $5 amount, right? But we could give a $1 amount. I used to know a gentleman in the church, and when he would be in the new members class, he would say to the folks, you know what? It doesn't matter whether you give $1 or whether you give $10,000. The point is that you give. Because it's not in the amount of money that you give you will be changed. It is in the giving of it with joy. God rest his soul, Dwight Hall used to say, when you give with joy, you will be changed. So imagine $5 extra per person. We would not have had any kind of deficit between what we got in and what we needed. $5 is what I spend on a cheap lunch every day. My secretary just said to me, Jana, we have to stop eating out lunch every day because this is getting expensive. It's the truth. It's the truth. I didn't stop to check this on the way in, but somebody told me that they bought a package of cigarettes the other day and it was $9.99. Imagine that $9.99 for something that's not helping you when the church could help with that $9.99. So you see, the stewardship portion that encourages the math, that's simple. It's just simple. It's like, what do we need? What did we get? How much more do we need to add to get that number? That's the simple part. The hard part of stewardship is being like Isaiah. The hard part of stewardship is being the one who, when God calls upon you, you say, you know what, I don't know how I'm going to do this because I don't have the resources, but here I am. Here I am, Lord. I will do exactly what it is you need me to do. What is it that you need me to do? That's the hard part of stewardship. Because you see, stewardship doesn't just include numbers for the budget. Stewardship includes the care of members. Stewardship includes the care of others, going out into the world and helping others. Stewardship includes giving those things inside of us that are time, talent, the gifts that God has given to us to be able to help in this world. And where we get ourselves in trouble is when God calls and we say, oh, no, that's mine. I can't do that. I don't want to do that. You see, when we have more of that Nicodemus mindset, when we think Jesus has got something to offer to us, but we approach Jesus in the dark and so that other people won't know what it is that we're doing, it's only when we have the Isaiah mindset. Here I am, Lord. Do with me as you will, that we begin to live what we call a stewardship lifestyle. Now, I have to tell you, I read a book this week that's called Not Your Parents' Offering Plate. Yeah, that's a new stewardship book. Not Your Parents' Offering Plate. You see, our parents, many, many years ago, gave to the church out of duty and obligation. But that's not what we do in the 21st century anymore. We do not give to the church out of a sense of duty and obligation any longer. People come to the church wanting to make a difference. If you've looked at our Facebook page lately, you'll see that I have, for the stewardship season, a banner on there that says, make a difference. Today, we come to the church wanting to experience a difference in our lives, as well as wanting to make a difference in the lives of others. We come wanting to know what it is that we can do to help in this world, so that things like terrorism, or things like strife, or things like war, or things like not being at peace, or things like homelessness and hungry and all of that sort of stuff, all of that can be fixed somehow. We come to the church to say, how can I be used? And if we haven't come to the church asking how we can be used, then that in our lives is a place where spiritual growth needs to occur. If we come to the church for anything other than being changed and going out into the world and changing, there's a place in us where transformation needs to take effect. Life in this world cannot sustain itself if the people of God are not being changed. Life as we know it needs all of us to be so transformed, to be so changed by the power and grace of God, that when we go forth out of here, what we want to do is help others. You know, that's one of the reasons I believe that the church has been created. The church has been created to be that vehicle for God in the world where transformation occurs. And if we're doing anything other as a church than transforming lives, we've lost the whole message. If we're participating in things that are not transformational for the ones who attend and not transformational for those who are going to attend, if we're doing anything other than transformational work in the church, we are no longer the church. We are a social club that gets together to have a good time. I think that's where we get off track. We get off track believing that this is ours. Believing that all of this belongs to us. It's ours. Brothers and sisters, if I haven't taught you this in the almost 9 years that I've been here, this is not ours. This is God's. This church, the congregation that comes to this church to experience transformation, those who are out there that we help because we are a congregation, we belong to God. None of this is ours. And the way that we can tell that is that if all of this was gone tomorrow, we would still be a congregation. We would still be God's children coming together for the purpose of helping transform lives. Perhaps, maybe, perhaps, just maybe, that the differences in our numbers, that what we need and that what we get, perhaps maybe that deficit in the middle, is representative of just how much we lack in believing in God's ministry and mission that is happening here at St. Paul. Last week I said I had the vision for this congregation that we were going to become people who were like the leper who turned back to Jesus and said thank you when the other 9 went off about their business. Well, I also have the vision for this congregation that we are going to become people like Isaiah. The one who doesn't know how things are going to get done. The one who says, I'm unclean and has to be touched by the seraph to be clean. But the one who says, here I am. I trust you to give us what we need, Lord, so that we can go forward as the congregation. I have a vision, you see, that we are going to become Isaiah people. The ones who say, we don't know how it's going to be done, but you know what? I believe in the mission and ministry of this church, and so I'm going to give so that we can get it done. I believe that we're going to become people like Isaiah, that even though there are those whose hearts are hardened and those who won't listen, we are going to keep going forward into the glory of God. Because you see, God is already ahead of us and knows how we need to be getting these things done and accomplished. Numbers just tell us how much we do or do not believe in God's power. I want to say that again. Numbers tell us how much we do or do not believe in God's power. But if we're Isaiah people, you see, if we get filled with that spirit of Isaiah, the great prophet of Israel, if we get filled with the power of Isaiah in us, those numbers will become irrelevant because we will have what we need because we have the faith to accomplish it. We have the faith for it to come about. We have the belief in the mission and ministry that St. Paul is being called to do. Does everybody know what the mission and ministry of St. Paul is? Living as disciples of Christ, loving and compassionate, living the way of Jesus, who are called to grow, think, accept, and serve. It's on your bulletin every single solitary week. You'll notice that I have had Lynn start putting it on the front page of our bulletins. This is our mission. We are called to be loving and compassionate, living the way of Christ, growing, thinking, accepting, and serving. Do you believe in that mission? That's where we need to start in stewardship. How much do you believe in that mission? Who has been changed because of the power of the mission here at St. Paul? I would have had hoped to have seen a hand raise. Who has been changed by the power of God through the mission of St. Paul United Church of Christ? Where we start then is in that mission. Believing in, as the 21st century would say, buying into the fact that God has placed a mighty mission upon us. I want to go back to the $5. $5 seems like so little in today's world. I know people who pay more than $5 just for a cup of coffee. I don't drink coffee. And I suppose that if I was still drinking Coca-Cola and it was $5.60 for one Coca-Cola, I would spend it. But what I'm here to tell you is that we need to have faith in the fact that your extra dollar, your extra $5, your extra $10 is making a difference in the lives. You don't know when the person in this congregation comes through the door and says, I need to have some money for my lights to stay on in my house. You don't know when the person in this congregation needs to have help with their medical bills. But what you do need to have is the faith and the power that that is happening. We are transforming lives. So what I want you to do with your little joy thing this week, what I want you to do with your little joy thing here, is begin to articulate on this piece of paper the way your life has been changed by the power of the ministry at St. Paul. How you have been changed. You might just be visiting with us for the first time today, and perhaps maybe you leave here changed a little bit because you've heard great music or watched this beautiful one be baptized. This, you see, brothers and sisters, is what it's all about. It's all about growing the place where the little ones, where the damaged ones, where the hurt ones, where the broken ones, where the ones who are so lost can come and experience God's love and grace. I want you on your sheet this week to start articulating how it is that the ministry of St. Paul has helped you change and be transformed. And bring that back and place it up here. Because our goal is to have our joys fill the altar. Think about how we can be the transformational force in this world. Amen.